a not normal brand. We're talking about 2-person brands. There's nothing wrong with a person brand. We've been doing person branding since the 1950s. One could argue that Elvis was the epitome of the good person brand, the Beatles and so on and so forth. All of the American presidents, beginning with maybe JFK. For example, Nixon went up against JFK in the 1960s. JFK won because he was better looking, and Nixon TV. I mean, it's hundreds of studies being done on that kind of thing. So don't be limited for those of you who haven't brands yet. Please remember that if somebody chooses it before you, then obviously it's taken off. Please, guys, I ask you very nicely, please make sure you don't end up presenting the same brand as another person, because if you do, the first person who presented is going to get the marks. The second person who presented is going to have to then apply to do the supplementary, because we can't have Nike is now basically off the table because Chris is Air Jordan today. Coke is off the table. Amazon thingy. Oh yes, 2000 Barbie, which is very interesting. Amazon's also very interesting. Mobile has chosen Pepco because he works for them, and then some of the others. So please choose your brands as soon as you can, and then you have a week to finalize them. If after a week you haven't, then you're stuck with the one that you've got. Okay, so let's see. Okay, Chris, I think we're good for you to go. So guys, just to bring you up to speed, I'm sure you guys all know, Chris, who is your very dynamic and very student-centric and very with it and very you know, wanting to make sure the students are getting their maximum bang for their buck, has offered to be the sacrificial lamb on the slaughter, so to speak, on the altar, although that sounds very ominous. And really, guys, I'm not going out to, and that's which Chris is helping with the marking, just to let you know. To fail distinctions. I really truly am. I'm trying to let you guys shine in this course. I just to make sure that we're maintaining an academic standard that the VIT and the teachers get from that you say Boston, they say, oh well, that's a good place. I've got that's cool because I know you're good work there. So really want from you guys. So please know that we are here to help you and support you, and we are here to really help you guys through this process. You know, and I know that there is some where, you know, maybe you feel like you've been disappointed by certain things. You guys feel that you were supported and nurtured and you were stretched. Really want you to feel at the end of the day that it stretched you, that, you know, you walked away and like, oh, my muscles are sore, but I feel better because I now know more. So cool. So Chris is going to do his presentation today, and then I'm going to basically mark him on his presentation. So he's going to do a mock presentation of what you guys can expect to do for your presentation, which is coming up in September. And guys, today is the 23rd. You basically have a month. So if you haven't started, please, please, please get cracking. It's not the kind of thing you can do overnight. It's going to take quite some time, you know, for you guys. And I know you've got research, you've got your research projects to do. And I know that you guys are busy and some of you work and so on and so forth, you know, and it's starting to warm up again. So you're going to feel, because I know Joburg, it's that horribly slap. You feel so pop and drained of energy before the rain comes back, and it's hot and the lovely syringa starting to bloom, but you feel all drained and hot and like, oh, I've got no energy. So factor all of that in, hydrate well and get lots of rest, and really, you know, put your heart and soul into it, because it's such a stunning assignment. Okay, so without me waffling anymore, I'm going to hand over to Chris, and then we're gonna mark it as if Chris is a student like you guys, and I'm going to give him feedback and run through it the way I would do it. So Chris, I don't know if you want to add anything, but the floor is yours, sir. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Rob. Hi, everyone. What was I gonna say first? I had something first to say, but I can't remember. So I am just going to share my screen. And we're going to start with the brief, which was my starting point for this, trying to remind myself about what was required. So, you know, the basic thing, you're choosing a brand. My advice here, and so this is good advice, obviously, one that you really love, one that you admire, that you want to sort of work with and learn more about. I would add to this that practically it should also be one that you know already quite well. So if there's a few brands that you love, like it's going to be the one that you know the most about. So like, I can't remember who it was that Rob said is choosing the brand that he works for. That's also a really smart thing to be doing. Okay, so then there's some examples. Then, just to let you know, I am a bit short of this. So I sort of misremembered, and I thought that the 5 here could include Kung, which was not correct. And also I only have 2 online academic articles, but I have 5 books, including Kung, and then Dusa I couldn't find, so I didn't use it. Whoops. But what I wanted to do with this whole process was, if you've seen the document, which is I uploaded in PowerPoint, supposed to be in PDF. The brief also says that must be PDF, so now it's PDF. I guess I should upload the PDF now as well, just so that everything's sort of correct. But there was a weird thing that happened with one of the slides when I PDF'd it. These links, like, see, it says here, she runs the night, but when I hover over on the PDF, it says Beyond, which is a different campaign, and I don't know why it's doing that. So just check that kind of thing when you do PDF, and make sure that when you're presenting, like things like this don't happen, that now you're going to click on this and it's going to take you to the wrong place. And then both of these, so this is a YouTube video, it's going to that same Beyond campaign that they did, but it's not correct. But in any case, I have all the links that I need open here already, which when you present is probably good practice, just to kind of be ready. I've got the books that I used on my desk, because the brief also says you should have the books with you when you present, if possible. If you're feeling like you need space that you don't have, when we do organize the scheduling for the week, remember it's to submit your actual document, which will look something like this one, and I will take you through it in a second. That same week, that ends on the 22nd of September, we'll schedule times with all of you. Obviously, we'll use the class time that week, but like Rob said, that time might not be enough for everybody, so we still need to get the scheduling down. And if you want to use my office to present with as a desk and stuff that you can put books, then we can do that. Okay, so this, so last week, Wednesday, in class where I had the idea to do this, and then either Wednesday or Thursday, I went to the library and got the books, not enough books as it turns out, so maybe I will lose marks in that criteria, which, just to remind you, the way the criteria is set up. So there's 20 marks for having all the right thing or the right number of sources, which I do not. So we'll leave it to Rob to say how much marks I lose as a result. Correct in-text referencing. Okay, that's also going to be like a problem. But I think I've used correct English, and then it's the 30 marks for the presentation itself, which I tried my best to make look nice and have relevant visuals, and then another 30 marks for the strategic thinking, reasoning, and answering of questions after the presentation, which, when I am finished talking about this, it would be really cool if there were some questions from the class and from Rob. You know, that's I think that process forms part of the mark allocation as we have it. Okay, so like Wednesday or Thursday, I went and got the books, and then Friday, I don't know, I was doing other things and uploading stuff to Col Campus and whatever, and then I started work on this on Monday, and then worked on it yesterday and finished it this morning. But I do want to say that this whole thing that I'm doing here is really not about me. It's not supposed to be about me. It's supposed to be about just sort of providing further scaffolding and direction and structure for you when you start and work on your submission and your presentation. And that is why this is going to be probably longer than the 20 minutes allocated to your presentation, because while I am, you know, doing the thing and presenting, I'm also wanting to like teach you how to do it and sort of go through the process that I went through to guide you. Okay, so this is the first slide. It has the name of the subject, it has F3, and then it has my name, and it has the logos of, I still don't know, I was saying Nike, and then everybody was like, are you American? I was like, Nike, okay, whatever. And then the Jumpman logo, which is Air Jordan, and I made it purple. And so step one, so your presentation doesn't need to say step one, right? It's for me to guide you. But the first step that I realized doing this was, before I can formulate a strategy around the brand, I need to understand it better. So it's going to be these three things that you would need to research: audience, the vision and mission of the brand, and the brand values. Because if you're going to suggest that they do things or whatever, you need to understand the essence of what the brand is. So then that was some Googling that I did about Air Jordan brand, nature of the brand, these key terms I was looking for. How do I go back on PDF? Okay. But looking to understand where it's at, the audience. So there's this website, which if you're doing an international brand, probably will have some data on it, like it does for Air Jordan. If you're doing something that is South African, might not have it, in which case you kind of have to look elsewhere. I had this sort of tangent where I was sort of halfway into the Air Jordan thing when I decided, let me do Nando's. It's South African, it's a cool brand. And then now I have a sort of half-finished Nando's presentation. And I realized doing that obviously Nando's isn't on this website, but maybe, I don't know, we'll get there with that one. And it was halfway through that, then came back to this, and my advice there is, don't do that. It set me back, where I was kind of like, oh, I'm doing this, but it would be nice to kind of do a South African thing and something else, and then like, yeah, make sure the choice that you go with is a brand that you love and is something that you know about and can find stuff about. Because just for the sake of time, you don't want to be kind of moving around and chopping and changing. Okay, so this is just a graph that I found on this website, which shows us that as of this year, the brand awareness of Air Jordan is very high among a large sample of people who were asked about various brands. And then popularity, ownership, and loyalty, obviously those go down, but given the sheer number of people who were involved in the survey, basically what I learned from this is that, okay, the brand is doing pretty well. And I guess I kind of knew that already, because there had been the documentary on Netflix, The Last Dance, which I watched. Not all of it, but I watched the episode that dealt with his association with Nike over the weekend, and also watched Space Jam, which is a movie with Michael Jordan and Bugs Bunny, which is sort of from before your time, and also watched an episode of this show called Abstract, The Art of Design, and there was an episode of that which interviewed and followed Tinker Hatfield, who's the head designer from the beginning of the Air Jordan and Nike collaboration in 1984, and then for many, many years. So I guess the very first thing was I just spent some time sort of immersing myself in like entertainment around the brand, which, I mean, depending on what you choose, there might not be the same kinds of like shows and presence. But what I'm saying is like, it was good to start by just like enjoying the thing, whether that means like if it's videos associated with it or movies associated with it or whatever. But I started in a sort of visual way like that over the weekend, and then it was Monday, and then I was like, I have to like read all this stuff, which I then did, and I'll take you through sort of how that went and how everything fits together. But the first step is about some research and report back on where the brand is at and learning about that. So this is from that same website, and this now breaks it down by generation in terms of the audience that we are learning about here. And as you can see, okay, awareness is like more or less everybody's aware to a high degree, which shows that the marketing and branding involved here has been successful. People know about it. But then when we get to popularity, ownership, and loyalty, we see that really the target audience is young people. It's Gen Z is the highest in those categories. Popular amongst almost 50% of the Gen Z individuals that were surveyed, and millennials quite high as well. Then there's a big drop among Gen X when it comes to popularity, ownership, and loyalty. And so sort of seems like the older you get, the less you really find Air Jordan popular and want to own the shoes or are loyal to the brand. So I learned from this, okay, the target audience is kind of Gen Z and millennials. So we'll take it sort of born 1980 to as millennials, sort of to 2012. It's young people that the brand is trying to reach. And I guess I probably knew that already, but it was good to find something formal and official like this that said, okay, this is the case, this is the audience. Then go from there to learning more about the values of the audience. So you'll see Jordan owner is dark blue, non-owner is light blue. And the longest line for Jordan owner in terms of values is to be successful, which is not really a surprise since, as we'll see, that is a core value of the Air Jordan brand and the Nike brand, which owns the Jordan brand. So I learned something, and again, it's something you have a sense for at this stage that you probably already kind of know, but yeah, good to see it sort of formalized and broken down like this. The reason this is important, okay, I mean, obviously, if you're making a strategy, it's going to be important to know who you're trying to reach, what their values are. So to be successful, that's a big value, and a happy relationship is less of a value than non-Jordan owners. So you've got being successful and advancing my career. Jordan owners also outweighed everybody else. And then social justice is also quite high, which is going to be important for when we look at some of the successful integrated media campaigns that have been done, well, recently in the last 10 years, let's say. There's a lot of sort of inclusion and diversity and empowerment kind of work that the brand has done. And so you have an alignment between those kinds of campaigns and the values of the audience. So you've got, okay, I want to be successful. I want to advance my career, and social justice is a value as well. Yeah, so through that I learned a bit more about what the target audience of this brand values and what they are like. Okay, next what you need to have is in order to still on step one, learning about the vision and mission of the brand. This is what I found, and I'm dealing with, okay, so basically it's obviously two brands that sort of live together and support each other. They basically have the same values. They have the same mission and vision. So the mission, which here's the link to where I found this for your brand, you'll look it up, you'll try to find it. Bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. The word here, every, became more and more important as I went through this process. And then the vision, okay, expand human potential, it's innovation, it's creativity, and then you have this social responsibility thing coming in here again with diversity, sustainability. So it seems like they are really trying to kind of look after that value as more than like a buzzword on a website, because we see it embedded in some of the campaigns that they've done. Still step one, brand values. So, I mean, these things, mission, vision, brand values, it's all related, but see how much of this detail you can find. Here was my source. This is all online sources at this point for this step. While I was trying to understand the brand, I didn't really go to books yet. I didn't really go to accredited articles yet. That came a bit later. So your starting point is it's a lot of Googling, like what are the brand values of your brand? What is the target audience like, and putting it together in a slideshow like this. So common values for Nike, and Air Jordan. It's success and winning, innovation, pushing limits, inspiration, motivation, high energy. And then I have this quote from this website, which says, Nike's advertising campaigns often feature high energy motivational content that focuses on the connection between sports and personal empowerment. So this is all contextualizing, right? It's getting a sense of what the brand is before we start strategizing for it. Rob, your hand is up, I think. What's up?
Yes, it is. Thanks, Chris. Was going to say, let me lower it again. Okay, so I don't want to ruin your flow. Normally, what I would do is if this was not a mock-up, if this was the actual thing, I would have stopped the student by now to ask some questions. Do you want me to save those for the end so I don't break your flow, or should I just do it the way that we would be doing it if this was the real deal?
I think save it for the end.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. Cool. So that's what you'll have for step 1. Step 2, what we want you to do is an analysis of an existing and successful integrated media management campaign that your brand has done. And then on this slide, also any links that you might need. This was important because before I did this step, I was trying to have ideas, was trying to think about like, what could I recommend that they do? And it helped a lot to say, okay, what integrated media campaigns have they done? Why were those successful? What can I learn from that? And then after that, how can I bounce off that with something related? And that really helped with arriving at ideas, which is a kind of hard part of this assessment, is like, what are your recommendations going to be? So it helps to do this. That's why it's here as step 2. So I Googled again, Nike campaigns, integrated media, integrated marketing campaigns, and then the brand name, and then went through a few and found one that worked as something that very much integrated process. So at this point, I want to turn to one of the books that I have, which is called Promotional Strategy, Marketing Communications in Practice by Ludi Kukumur. And on page 3, she says, integrated marketing communication is a concept of marketing communication planning that recognizes the added value of a comprehensive plan that evaluates the strategic role of a variety of communication disciplines. For example, and then these are the ones advertising, personal sales, sales promotion, direct marketing, public relations, sponsorship, and combines these disciplines to provide clarity, consistency, and maximum communications impact. So what you're looking for is a campaign that your brand has done where the advertising, the PR, the direct marketing was all organized around, the same core values. That's what this source, Kukumur, means when she talks about consistency. It is a combination of everything that you do adding up to the same thing. All right, so the way you do your ads, the way you engage with the target audience through direct marketing on social media, the way you do your sales promotion specials, or the way you do events and whatever. It all needs to have the same values. And that's why on this slide I've listed them. So community, togetherness, belonging, mutual support, and inclusion. So this campaign, and when you present, you will make some time to analyze why this was a success. So this would be one of the sources that go in the reference list. It was 2012. She runs the night, and I found this great online article that explained it and what was kind of going on here. So the problem was, as I've learned from kind of reading this and spending time with this, was that women at the time were not really buying Nike shoes. They were buying Nike apparel, but when they went running, there was a competitor brand, ASICS, that was more popular. So their objective was to kind of overturn that situation through finding ways to connect with female runners and get them talking about Nike. How did they do that, and how does this fit in with the 5 elements of an integrated media management campaign? Let's look at that. So firstly, there was some research that they did, speaking with young females who took their running seriously. And through that, they kind of hit on this experience that women have of running alone or running at night, that there's a kind of danger to that, there's a fear to that. The questions would have been like, tell us about your running, and this insight would have come about. And they found that like women would do this by themselves. And so the idea was around togetherness. That was the core value. And so they needed this forum to communicate. You'll see, it was being together, as you can see from this image. That's just, sorry, one of these planes going over my office, sort of shaking things. I'll think about 9/11 right now. Okay, so there was this event, right, that was organized and held together with this value. This one, is individual, but they had in their advertising, a combination of both, where on the one hand it was, okay, there's these kind of brave women running at night, but ultimately we're going to do it together and have this run and various events that they organized together. Create a community for young females bound by a passion for running. And so there were physical running communities and digital communities. So it was like, we are going to get together and actually have this run, but we're also going to have contact and discussions online. And so that would have been part of their direct marketing on Facebook and their social media, where there would have been prompts about, what's your experience? And then people women were talking to each other, and there was this dialogue, and they were kind of getting excited about this whole thing. And then the advertising was placed in female worlds, not running worlds, shattering the male-dominated norms, which that's going to become important for my sort of recommendation for the strategy. then the execution, okay, so integrated. Every channel that there was all about this value of coming together, belonging together, doing things together, sort of being safe in numbers, celebrating each other. It's that core value. And what I learned from also reading the books is that consistency seems to be the most important thing. Cohesion. For example, Skinner, Von Essen, and Mersham, in their Handbook of Public Relations on page 61, they say that principles of good brand advertising concentrates on one selling idea. They say it does not scatter its efforts or diffuse its impact. It establishes a penetrating, memorable reason for trial. And so, and you find that sentiment when you read this literature, that it's so important for things to be singular. You need a singular thing like this campaign had, where it was authentic because it was about real women's experiences, but it really was about the community thing, the being together and running together. That was carried through in the way they did their social media direct marketing, in the way they did their events management, in the way they did the advertising, which let's look at a little bit of how that looked. Okay, the more of us that run, the brighter we can burn, as the tagline in the advertising. That connects to the idea, the central core value of togetherness, strength in numbers, always coming back to that. And it's that cohesion, that singularity, that process of making sure you organize everything you do to embody and reflect that one thing, that you can arrive at a successful campaign like this. she said something about the value of a culturally connected idea, which connects to something that I read in Jain, Jain, and their book Marketing, Planning and Strategy on page 9, talking about the concept of strategy. They say, in its strategic role, marketing consists of establishing a match between the firm and its environment. In other words, between the brand and its environment, establishing a match there, which is what this campaign did really well. And what they did really well, like I keep saying, was to organize all of their decisions for advertising, for PR, for direct marketing, for choosing to use ambassadors who represented the core values of the campaign, which were this thing of togetherness and strength in numbers. Then still step 2, just some notes on the success of the campaign. And I have kind of done this naturally already as we were talking. What I wanted to show you with where you bring the book in, like I was doing just now, is you hear something from the video or you read something in the online source. If you have done a bit of reading, then you can kind of go like, oh, okay, that author said that same thing, and I can bring that in here. So this was a accredited article that I found. I'm sorry, I really don't know how to start to say the names, but fortunately enough, it was, and let me show it to you. That's the other one I used. It's this one. It was called Strategic Integrated Marketing Communications, Domination or Equality of Elements. And fortunately enough, it speaks directly about Nike and Air Jordan in that article. And the quote that I pulled from it is again this idea. Conveying, and they're talking in fact about this specific campaign as well. She Runs the Night, and why it was successful. And their findings was that it was the communication of one strong message to the audience through direct contact with its customers, as you saw there, through social media engagement, and through, the promotional video had that same one strong message. So you see the advertising, you see the direct marketing lining up to reach the audience with one strong message. And then the value was for the customers in solving an important problem for them, which is the thing of being scared to run at night, and also not having necessarily a community. Sort of just run on my own, and that's what I do, and that's how it is. And then you have Nike coming in to say, but we can do this kind of together, and we will facilitate that for you. All carefully planned, and as it says here, with support of all available elements of marketing communication tools, which extends to the organization of events in a very real way. So the PR involved in that, the direct marketing of the social media engagement, the creation of the ad that was on TV and on YouTube, and then the event itself, I suppose, would fall under also sales promotion, which is defined, I learned, and do I have that definition somewhere, as a short-term kind of push to promote something. I don't have it with me. I should be more organized, but we'll get back to that. Then another quote of a similar sort of idea and this is from a book that I have, Benek, McWade, and Pumo, who on page 177, they talk about communicating ideas clearly. Here's this concept again coherently, and then also in a persuasive manner, which I haven't really touched on. But seeing how this campaign, the video that we watched, there's theory behind it, there's thinking behind it, and that's the value of academics. I know it sometimes feels like it's sort of getting in the way, and it's this elitist world that's like written in a way that's sometimes hard to understand, but it really is valuable, like, and for me, sort of illuminating to see, okay, the actual campaign itself was so coherent, and every operation and process was so organized around one coherent idea, and then to read that in the source as well, I was like, okay, this is good practice. This is best practice. I'm now learning more about, if I were to pitch something, how might I go about it? Having learned about the audience, having learned now about, in step 2, why a successful integrated campaign that they did was as successful as it was. And it's all about the clarity, the cohesion, the one strong message. Then this one, I'm not going to speak too long about, but I've included it in case you've chosen a brand that is like not doing well. But even if you have chosen a brand that is doing okay, I think it's still worth it to spend a slide on just, you can determine how much time you spend here on step 3 in terms of just briefly a challenge or challenges faced by the brand. So this source was telling me that at this time, 2019, Adidas was becoming very popular and was really challenging the Jordan brand, where Adidas was more sort of tennis shoe style. And so there was a fashion shift away from the basketball thing. It was also, you guys remember that when it was the superstars and the Stan Smiths, and like that was very, very popular, particularly amongst women as well, those particular Adidas shoes, superstars and Stan Smith. And also then at that time as well, jeans and skinny jeans and like sort of big chunky basketball shoes like this, just aesthetically doesn't always quite work. So there was that challenge, competition from Adidas, and then another challenge potentially of oversupply issues, just reissues the whole time. It's this retro thing, then it's that retro thing. And the idea here being, is that going to hurt their long-term brand value and their reputation if there's no more kind of mystique to it, just oversaturating the whole time? Is that kind of turning people off? So there was those things to, and have been those things to think about for the brand. And the reason that's there is because the whole point is to learn about the brand so that when you come up with your strategy, it's informed. You know what the audience is. You know in step 2 about a successful integrated media management campaign that they've done. And you know a little bit about some of the challenges that they are facing. And that brings us to what, given all of that, and what I've learned about the brand and about advertising and sales promotion and direct marketing and PR from the books, this would be sort of my idea. And I was stuck here, to be honest with you, at this point. And so in the process, okay, so now here, I arrived at this idea by talking to people. And I know the brief says like you have to do this on your own, but there's a difference between having conversations and networking and sort of copying and cheating from each other, which is what we're trying to avoid. But because that She Runs the Night campaign was obviously all about women, and I wanted to sort of bounce off that. I needed to speak to some women, and so I did, and it was only through that we arrived at this idea. So I'm just sort of being upfront about like what I did and didn't do throughout this whole process. So your step 4 must have what your objective is. My objective was sell more Air Jordans to women who, through a previous source we established, were firstly not really buying Nike shoes in general. And then when it comes to this, now we're going to start talking about culture. And there's a little prompt for me here to move to the textbook. So we're looking for Kung. Here it is, page 132, which I have open. Talking about culture, she says, there is no shortage of examples of culture's impact on strategic initiatives in the media. Example, the difficulties experienced by the Sony-BMG partnership and the AOL-Time Warner merger have both been ascribed in part to cultural differences. The strong and complacent culture of newspaper journalism has been blamed for the sector's inability to seize the potential of the internet, for example, and the newspaper sector's culture of prizing consistency has been identified as a factor behind its resistance to change. So that is not about Nike, it's not about Air Jordan, but it's about how a particular culture can have such an impact on things. And my sort of application of that here is that Air Jordan and Nike is quite a masculine brand. He's literally a man. You know, it's the NBA. I don't have sources for this. It would be easy to get though, and probably should get, but like the WNBA, especially in America, is treated often as this sort of joke. Even, I don't want to throw people under the bus now. I was about to say, didn't Kevin Hart, like, no, but that's like, no. But there is that. And so Kung talks about this sort of barriers that can come into play when you have a particular culture. Her example is the culture of sort of the newsroom was such that the embrace of the digital world was and has been slow. I am now applying that to the Jordan thing to say it's such a masculine thing to the point of almost exclusion, and the She Runs the Night campaign was picking up on that. It was kind of like, women aren't really about us. They aren't buying our shoes. They aren't like around. It's a whole segment of the population that we aren't reaching. So my idea was, okay, so She Runs the Night, they did that with athletics. That was all about running and running shoes. My sort of question after that was then, what if you were going to try do the same sort of thing in the lifestyle sneakers arena, where yes, Air Jordan, he's an athlete and it came from there, but really it's not shoes you actually use for running, or maybe use it for basketball, but generally it's a lifestyle thing. But women are also not really buying those shoes, because as we learned, they're buying Superstars and Stan Smiths and Converse and other things. And so it's mostly men who are wearing and buying Air Jordan. So the objective would be, we want women to buy more of our thing, and the central idea would be everyone belongs in the world of Air Jordan. That would be the central idea. The campaign name would be Just Shoes, where at this point, I want to draw your attention to what the men's shoes look like on the online store. It's just the various styles. Just giving you an idea. A lot of it that they do is like retro revivals and stuff. It's another brand value here is a lot of like nostalgia and sort of legacy going on, and sort of revamps of old styles and reissues. And that was that previous source's point about sort of saturation of that. But when we move from there to what the women's online store looks like, and just as an aside here, as you're going through this process, you know, as I've been doing, you're referring to the books and the articles and online sources, but like also think sort of logically. My whole thing around this idea is masculine and feminine and men's shoes in Air Jordan and women's shoes in Air Jordan. So it made sense for me to now in the presentation pull up the actual products that they're offering and see what we find. And so the woman that I spoke to was saying, why does it have to have this like pink and this purple and this pink, and like why does it have to come with this like other values of what like a girl's shoe should look like, what a feminine shoe should look like? We change the color, we're going to change maybe the shape and the style of it for it to look a bit cuter. And then what you'll see as you scroll down is that the women's shoes, they run out a lot faster than the men's ones do, and you start to now get the other apparel. So there's something going on here where culturally it would be very hard to, once you've built the brand around Michael Jordan himself and the NBA and all very much involving men in that world, and your objective is, okay, how are we going to shift that? How are we going to sort of increase popularity among women? What I would do is bounce off the sort of she runs the night thing and adopt the values of the similar ones that campaign had: accessibility, inclusivity. I don't have quite that angle of togetherness, but on the same kind of thing of, well, we have an experience where there's exclusion, or there's like, I mean, if you look at some of these, like this one, which kind of looks like the Jordan 11s, you don't find it in the woman's offering. You find like other, the big ones you do, like, okay, Air Jordan 1 is there, but what you find is this like other stuff, you know, this like pink stuff. And my sort of reading of this is that, okay, you've got the world of Air Jordan, which is sort of for men, and then you've got, okay, there's women as well, so we need to kind of maybe resize some of them, but then we're also going to have like platforms and pink and purple and stuff. And one of the women that I spoke to said, why can't it be just shoes? And this stuff that is for men, and all that's different is the size of your feet. And then it's like, you're welcome in this world as well. Like this particular red, white, and black colorway is such an iconic part of the brand, and it's the 11s, which was so popular. And then I'm not going to find that colorway for women, like there sort of, but also not really. And so why not? So that would be the idea, and would follow a similar integrated approach, okay, maybe it would look something like this. Oh, and it plays on Just Do It, which fits with Nike, and it fits with shoes because it was a very early ad with Spike Lee and Michael Jordan that it's got to be the shoes. Okay, so kind of playing off of that, right, in the name of it, where it fits within the precedence of it. And the reason I was able to make that connection is because I'd watched the documentary, I'd seen that ad, which is why I'm also saying to you as the very first step, immerse yourself in the thing so that you can make connections. All right, now the sort of meat of it that we're looking at for the final 30 marks is, okay, what are you actually going to do in terms of integrating things? We've outlined what the goal is. The goal is we want women involved in the brand more than they have been, and it's going to be the Just Shoes idea. And now we need to break it down according to the 5 elements of the integrated media management mix. So advertising, this is where the books were very useful because the books were giving me like best practice or good practice. So for example, advertising, like I know what advertising is, but if I go to Skinner, who these 3 authors, Skinner, Von Eschem, and Mersham, who on page 61 of their book called The Handbook of Public Relations talk about advertising, which I think I did read about this earlier. I picked out the idea of it concentrates on one selling idea, which for this would be the idea of everyone is welcome in this world. We're not going to have different colors for different people. It's going to be the same thing. It's going to be just shoes, and that's the one selling idea. It must also be consumer oriented, which I would pick up from the She Runs the Night campaign of women's experiences. In this case, it would be women as feeling excluded. Now this campaign would say, but you're welcome. Okay, so it's consumer oriented, it's selling one idea, and it must also be, advertising must also be persuasive. So how would I make it persuasive, I guess, is a question ideally I would have the answer to, but you would need to have the answer to say this is your plan for advertising. And it is credible and sincere, this in the same text. Credible and sincere. We said Gen Z really values Air Jordan, and Gen Z also, and maybe I should have a source for this as well, values authenticity and sincerity. And it's kind of over the thing of, inauthentic advertising. So again, She Runs the Night, it was very sincere, it was very authentic. It was, we spoke to you and learned about this experience, and we designed our whole campaign around it so it worked. And then again, this idea, it is simple, clear, and complete. So Just Shoes would be simple, clear, and complete. There is no possibility of misunderstanding of what is going on. And it says all that the copy strategy calls for. Okay, so there would be a YouTube ad, there would be billboards, it would be Just Shoes, right? It would be men and women and children and just the same thing, different sizes. There's no athletics going on here, which makes it difficult because it's now like, okay, She Runs the Night, we're all going to go on a night run, and night runs for PR and events and stuff. If it's like lifestyle stuff, that makes things a little bit more difficult. I'd have to workshop around that. Next one, PR publicity. This is a quote from Kukumur and another one from Jane. I read the one from Jane here about matching brand and environment, but this one again from Kukumur, empathy, dialogue, relationship, communication the marketer establishes with the prospect that makes the difference, that separates them from the pack. So the campaign would need to have this, and the idea itself already has empathy in having analyzed the situation of that I'm talking about, sort of cultural exclusion that's resulted in sort of popularity of the brand more among men than women, but empathy, dialogue, which you would build into direct marketing like She Runs the Night did, starting conversations on online platforms. You would do that and it would be like all around, oh, I'm so tired of this, like, I don't know, pink and purple and like Spice Girls platform shoes type look that really, I mean, look at this again. The platform ones are that buffalo shoe Spice Girls look, and it's so far removed from the Air Jordan thing. It's like, what is this? So you don't have that. You don't have that. You just have the thing that everybody can wear just so that it fits you. Doesn't have to be these sort of weird cultural distinctions that are being made. And it would be that kind of conversation and that welcoming into this world where it's like it's the NBA, it's only for men, it's Michael Jordan. You have the WNBA, it sucks, right? Like just kind of cutting through that sort of narrative and approach to things. Sales promotion, I would make the smaller sizes for women's feet and maybe for children, cheaper for a limited time to coincide with the launch. So would do that. That would be integrating, that would be making a decision that says this discount is part of the welcoming you, in recognizing you, right? Charging you less, but only for a short amount of time so you don't lose money, but that would be part of the campaign. Personal sales, you would just have to make sure your employees in the stores uphold the core campaign values of inclusivity and being welcomed, and we have stuff for you here in the store. Look, we have it now, like, and you're welcome here. That in their approach, in their language, in their tone would need to be there. And then direct marketing was spoken about, but yeah, it would be the social media platforms that would aim to start conversations, not only about the product, but about the experience. You know, been kind of left out of this world for so long, where the men are the athletes, it's the Michael Jordan, it's the men who own Nike, it's the Tinker Hatfield, who was the man who designed the shoes, you know. And now the conversation would be there, not necessarily in an angry way, but in an empowering way of being welcomed. So that would sort of be my idea. I was one short, I thought, I'm a few short, but I got to the end and I was like, okay, I need some more sources. So just before we finish off with the reference list, which you have to do, I didn't do it, but you know, it's boring work that please do. It's very easy, just follow the Harvard method. But before we do that, this is to show you how you use sources, which I've been trying to do as we've been going. I asked the question last week, what is the role that this academic stuff plays in this understanding brands and brand strategy? It's this kind of thing. From this source, McWade and Chernatoni, which is here. It's called The Evolving Nature of Branding, Consumer and Managerial Considerations. And the part of it that was relevant to this brand and presentation was about the brand as an icon. To be well entrenched in the consumer's mind, the icon must have many associations. Okay, so now I've got my idea, and now I'm reading this thing that says it's good to have as many associations as possible, where Air Jordan, which the source is talking about, and it's good to have accredited sources that talk about your brand that you can use like this. And even if they don't, you can still apply them like I was doing with Kung and stuff earlier with culture like that. But they say, all right, the more associations a brand has, the greater its network in the consumer's memory, and the more likely it is to be recalled. So as much as I kept saying one strong idea, Skinner, Von Essen, and Mersham talk about concentrating on one selling idea. You do one thing at a time, campaign by campaign, but each campaign as you go can keep building associations. So their point here is that associations are athletic prowess, and then also winning, and all the Nike brand values of like inspiration and motivation and pushing limits and innovation and all that stuff. If we did the Just Shoes thing, then you bring in also associations of accessibility and inclusivity, which I've just made the point was part of She Runs the Night, which is successful. And then just some other examples of stuff that they do where there's inclusivity and accessibility and diversity and community involvement as a brand value, like the Wings Initiative, which don't think I have it open, but I had it on the slide itself. It's empowering the community, investing in youth, and here you'll see men and women part of this. They all drew one of the shoes, and it's like bursaries, I think, basically that they offer, and they'll do a campaign around that. So my point is, they do this stuff. They did She Runs the Night. Beyond is one from this year, which is also leaning into empowerment of women and welcoming of women into the Air Jordan world, which has been so masculine for so long. And the point is, this book, or this article is saying it's good to build positive associations like that. That's where you have an iconic thing, where as much as, yes, an integrated campaign is cohesive, it is singular, it has a single goal, it has a single set of core brand values, but it's also good to not stay in the world of only success, victory, winning, pushing boundaries. That's part of it, but you add the association of sensitivity to culture and diversity and inclusion, and you do that in a way where it's authentic and sincere, like Skinner, Von Essen, and Mersham say that advertising should be. Then you can sort of build the brand, and I think the idea for Just Shoes fits in with a lot of what the brand has sort of been doing already. So it's not going to be this like weird thing that's coming out of left field. There's some precedents for it already, which when you're putting this together, this is why step 2 was so important. None of the ideas or strategies and whatever that I've spoken about, I wouldn't have had any of that without really spending time with this one, which was so well integrated, and without sort of learning, okay, this is the kind of thing that they do. Let's sort of build on that, bounce off that, and keep within that. Was there anything else from, okay, we did the advertising thing. For PR and publicity, I did read that quote. Kukumur, I read from. Yes, this was all about clarity and consistency again. On page 2, they also say, if a campaign is uncoordinated and frequently inconsistent, the results achieved will be less than optimum. So cohesion, bringing back to what you need to have, which is a central idea like this, a campaign name, campaign values, which are built into all the elements. It's in the advertising, it's in the personal sales, and it's in the direct marketing, it's in the PR, it's in all the operations. Okay, that I don't need to go through really. It's just like there's precedence for my idea. It's not coming out of nowhere. Okay, so you have that document. It gives you the steps. The trickiest thing that I found, the hardest part of this, was sort of where to put the books and the online articles, and that's why speaking to you now is trying to show you that's about matches and connections. This author says this is what we see in the case study, kind of applying those together. But you really can get started, I found, like by just that high level Googling of step 1, let's understand the brand, its audience, and its brand values. All of that comes from sort of just online sources. Plus then step 2 comes from that really as well, is just Google, this is the brand, what integrated media and marketing campaigns have they done that have worked. You go down the rabbit hole, why did they work, and you follow the templates on the presentation, you'll be fine. And as you get deeper into really what the books and the articles were about for me in this was strengthening the case for the strategy, to say, okay, we're going to do it like this, sell one single idea, and there's this whole research book that says that's what you should do, and therefore there's credibility to what I'm trying to do and trying to say. So you should look at the books you find from the library and the academic articles as sort of lending credibility and legitimacy to your strategy. You have your idea. That idea of just shoes, like I said, was from speaking to people. And I sort of briefed them. I said, this is what I have so far. I spoke to them about, I filled them in on the She Runs the Night campaign. And then I said, I would want to do something similar, except not with athletics, just with lifestyle. And they were able to like, we were able to have a conversation. And I haven't really read any books yet. So you can get quite far into the process. And then the books is like another, and the articles is like another coat of paint that you use and you start to read and you just bolster, and it gets more and more credible. And so in that way, I don't want you to see it as like a hindrance, even though, to be honest, I kind of experienced it a little bit like that. Like I said earlier, I was a little bit like reading, you know what I mean? Why can't I just use Google? Why can't I just, I had a bit of disillusionment going on. But the more I actually sat down and read stuff from books and articles, the more I started to feel like the ideas I was putting forward for the campaign were just more sort of grounded, and it just felt like safer somehow. And so that's the value in using them. But that's it from me. Rob said he had some questions earlier. Any questions also from you guys about if it's Air Jordan and Nike, or if it's about the assessment itself? Just Go for it.
Chris, are you done?
I'm done.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Okay, so I have many things that I want to say, but let me start by saying this. I think it was very well done. I am impressed. I do have some questions, and obviously I want to run through what you've done and discuss it with the class. But I can tell you just off the top of my head, without going into the nitty gritty, this would obviously be a pass. So Chris will be relieved to hear that. But it was so he might go, well, gee, thanks Rob for nothing, But
yeah,
it obviously is a pass, just based on what has done. But I'm not going to say anything more. Chris, I just want to check with you. I'd like the students to give you feedback first, and ask you questions. Are you running off? Are you pressed for time? Because there are one or two things I need to discuss with you with the class. So are you sort of needing to leave?
No, I'm around. A break would be nice though.
Okay, that's cool.
What I do want to say to you before that though is, okay, so it's good to know that it's a pass, but I also want to use this for you to say like, it could sort of do this better or that better. A sense of it that I have is from critiquing it from my side, probably could have had more detail on what kind of ad, what kind of PR, what kind of direct sales. I kind of ran through that very quickly, but I'm interested to hear what you would have to say about how it could be better, like, because that's learning opportunity for us. It wasn't really intended to be a perfect thing. There isn't even a reference list, and it was like I said, over sort of 2 days. And the point of it was to try create a template for you guys to use to get started. But can we have a break and then come back and do questions?
Of course, absolutely. I think that would be great, Sham. You must be, your mouth must be dry. I need a glass of water. Everybody needs to go to the bathroom. Before we break, I just want to say to you this. I definitely have a lot of feedback that I want to share with you, just on the whole thing, where I'm going to obviously, give critique and that kind of thing. So I've got that all in place. I've been taking some notes. So yes, we're going to go through all of that. And what I'd like to do, even though I can sense, I don't know if this is how you mark holistically and then go back to the rubric. I will get a sense of an assignment, from the beginning. I'll say, okay, I can see this is all coming together, and I'll explain to you why after the break, how it all come together. But I can definitely say this, this over here, I can see the student has done the work. This definitely, I want to reward the effort. Or I'm like, I get the impression the student was frazzled and was having a bad hair day, and it didn't come together. So in that respect, I'm going to go through all of it with you, but let's do that when we come back. So, guys, is 20 minutes enough for you? Should we reconvene at 2:30? Is it too much? Or is 20 minutes enough? You can take a break. You can go and go to the bathroom, go grab a hot dog from the canteen, or have a packet of chips, or put your feet up, have a cigarette, whatever. Is 20 minutes enough for you guys, or is it too long? I need feedback from the students, please. What do you guys want to do?
20 minutes is enough for me. I don't know about others.
20 minutes is what? Sorry, Notando?
Oh, no, I was saying it's good. I think 20 minutes is
20
fine.
minutes. Okay, guys. If there's anybody who's dissenting, otherwise we're going to go with a 20-minute break, and we'll be back at 2:30. Please, guys, stay in the class. You know what? It's been really, really good. I've got some great feedback to give Chris, to contextualize for you, and I'd love to hear what you guys all say. And so please stick around. And then we obviously need to go through the rubric as well, because I want to go through the rubric in detail with Chris and say, okay, Chris, this is what I think, this is what I'm feeling, this is how I'm calibrating, etc., etc., etc. So please stick around. Come back after your break, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys some more. Cool. Enjoy your break, guys. I'll see you in 20 minutes. Thanks.
Hey guys, are we back? Hello.
Hey Chris, sorry about the delay, guys. We're running 3 minutes behind schedule. My apologies for the delay. Good. Okay, so we back. I hope everybody's here. Wonderful. Okay.
Just quick. There was a slide that I skipped over that I just quickly, just on the same principle of one strong message, which is from these authors, and the principle from Skinner, Von Essen, and Mersham about concentrating on selling or one selling idea. Same idea from Kukumur about consistency in communication, clarity, consistency, the idea of everything you do working together towards one thing, like one value, one message, is in this brand. You see it in, okay, so the Nike logo does that sort of upward movement. The Jumpman Air Jordan logo, same thing. Movements upwards and stretching. And then even the numbers that he had, so he had 23 for most of his career, but it's a number that it goes up, right? So you 2, 1 up, and same thing, even higher when there was the 45 period, same thing. So it's in the numbers, it's in the logos, it's in the values, and that's really part of why the whole thing works so well. And when you guys do your presentation, what I wanted to show you is a part of that is aligning your ideas to the existing brand values, the existing target audience, the existing campaigns that have worked, and bouncing off of those and aligning yourselves to that as like a, okay, well, given all of this that's in place, this is maybe what would make sense to kind of do next. And I'm done.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chris. That's a very valid point. Now, I actually made a note about that, which I'm going to discuss with the class as well. Cool. Thanks so much. Okay, so guys, I see we have Notando, Ompemete, Michelle, Didi, Beverly, aka Lindiwe, Onelena, Matidiso, Ntabi Singh, and Dennis here. I would like each of you, please, to give your feedback to Chris, ask any questions that you have, share any thoughts that you have, any concerns, any clarity, any things that you wanted to get off your chest before I launch into the points that I've made. And then what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to actually go through the rubric and then just break it down and tell you how I would mark it, that you guys have a very good understanding. But thank you, Chris. It was a very worthwhile exercise. And again, I really think that, your student-centric outlook is really helpful, for students. I mean, I would feel very fear allayed if I knew that you were, you know, it really helps. You know, sometimes, as you guys know, I'm still studying, and I'm with UNISA, and sometimes you feel like you very much, you know, not so much anymore, but in the past there have been times when I really don't feel connected to the whole thing. So, so thank you, Chris. We appreciate the effort that you've gone to. I mean, I know it was a huge amount of work, and it's not like IMM is, you know, your only subject. I know you've got lots of them. So thank you. We appreciate it. So cool, guys. Thanks, Chris. Cool. Okay, so guys, who wants to go first? You can either choose or I'll pick you. What's going to work best for you? Should I just pick each of you? Or fire away? Gone. Okay, so I'm going to start with Ntabi Singh, and the reason why is because Ntabi Singh is in industry. She's a student who's working, and she's actually a part-time student, and she has a lot of experience, and that definitely shines through in her in some of the work that she submitted. So I'm going to ask her to shoot off, but I'd like to hear from each of you. Each of you has some very interesting. And remember as well, I'm now looking at your past assignments as well. Each of you has brought something very good to the table in your assignments. Even if you weren't happy with your performance in the assignment, you know, there were still elements in each of the assignments that was very, very interesting to read. And like, okay, that's a good point. I can see, yeah. So okay, so Ntabi Singh, if you wouldn't mind, will you please jump off for us, and then I'm going to choose you guys randomly at the Ntabi Singh. Are you happy with that?
Thanks, Rob. What do you need? Feedback from Chris's presentation, or?
Yeah, anything, feedback, anything you'd like to add, anything you thought, anything you have concerns or queries about, you know, what you got from it, what you learned about, you know, for your own presentation, anything. It doesn't, there's no specifics. Just, you know, you can say as much as you like, or, you know, as little as you like. So it's really up to you. I leave it in the ball in your court.
Yeah, so I don't have any feedback at the moment. I recently just decided on my brand that I'm going to work on. So from what Chris has presented, then I'll just go through that and compare it to how I would like to structure mine.
Awesome. Okay, thank you, Ntabi Singh. If you can please, if you don't want to share your brand with the group, if you can please share your brand privately with me, so I can book it off for you. Have you? I don't think you have, hey?
No,
when I spoke to you last, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll just share it with you.
Okay. Okay, awesome, great. So if you please just message me, that'll be great, and then I will
Okay.
I'll just mark it off, and then that's fine, no problem. Okay, cool.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Rob.
Ntabi Singh. Okay, cool. Let's go for Notando. Why don't you fire us off? Thanks, Ntabi Singh. Notando, what are your thoughts and feelings and feedback, etc., etc.? Or do you have any questions? I know you had your hand up, and I'm pretty sure I know why. During the presentation, your thoughts, please.
Okay, hi Rob. Just a question, I think, to start.
Yeah.
As Chris was presenting, I know in the beginning it was sort of, for me personally, I was trying to figure out, okay, where's this going? And then towards the end, it sort of did start to come together. And then what I noticed is that there was a huge focus on the campaign. She runs the night, and you know, just kind of dissecting it and like all the elements and how they were implemented and things like that. So I just wanted to find out if when we do our presentation, would it be okay to do something similar in that we pick a campaign that's been done, and then we spend a lot of time dissecting that and like how it connects to the mission, the vision, the values, all of that. And then, as Chris did, obviously proposing then a strategy, but not necessarily going deep into, I don't know how to put this, but like he ran through kind of the strategy and how it's going to touch on the elements, which was just shoes. And then he spoke about like advertising and how the PR would work and all of that, but not necessarily going in depth as to like, is the like what adverts are going to be used and where are they going to be published, or how is the PR going to run. It was sort of just like bullet points as to this is how this campaign is going to be approached. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It absolutely does, Tando. So I'm gonna, Chris, do you want to fire off first, or do you want me to share? What would you like to do?
No, I think you answer it.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Chris. Nortando, to answer your question, you know what? You can be, and the thing is, this is what's so nice about this thing. We really are giving you quite a lot of, a free range / free reign. So you can be you can drill down to just a campaign. If you wanted to focus on just one single campaign and discuss the 5 elements of the marketing communications mix just around a single campaign, that's fine. Nobody is going, I have no expectation, but you didn't look at the overall. You would need to look at the overall thing. So just to give you feedback, I think what Chris has done, and remember I said to you guys as well last week, you need to start with some sort of background thing. So Chris obviously got that. It's like, okay, well, I can't really analyze anything unless I know the background. So he started with, which was really good. So you need to start with some background. Now, the background doesn't need to be the way that Chris did it. He did some facts from Statista, which were really good. I think they were very interesting. It really contextualized a lot of stuff. You can give me a breakdown, and you can start immediately with academic sources. So just to also at the same time then obviously critique Chris's presentation. The one thing that I say is obviously, I have issues around brand loyalty. So what I would do is if Chris is presenting the presentation, I said, Chris, define brand loyalty. What do you mean? Explain that to me in detail, because when you start using that nomenclature and from the lexicon, then I'm like, okay, but we've established now that, that is a matter of opinion. But I love the way he set the scene. So you can do the same thing, but it can only be about a campaign. So Nortando, that's the first thing. The second thing is you could criticize, Chris's presentation and say, but you didn't give me specifics, so you made suggestions as to what you would do moving forward, but you didn't nail down all the elements. You didn't specifically go through, what you would do in terms of your new pitch, your new tagline, your new promotional elements for Nike, how you would promote the Air Jordan thing. I didn't get, it was too general. It was not specific enough in terms of advertising, PR, publicity, sales promotion, personal sales, and then direct marketing. The way I looked at it from my perspective, Chris, do you want to fire off? Okay, let me say this first, Chris. I will give you an opportunity
sure.
to answer. What I wanted to say
but
is,
I agree. But I'll elaborate.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Chris. What I would say from my perspective is I like the fact that he had made some suggestions on what they could do, overall to improve their campaign. And when I do once you guys have all spoken, I'm going to go through my notes with you guys, and I'll tell you why I like the suggestions that he made. And I also think it's a gap in their strategy, which deals with the fact that they're not really targeting women because Michael Jordan is a man and Air Jordans. So, the thing is, and I think they overcame that with She Runs the Night, but I'm not saying that, they necessarily overcame it all the way. I mean, Nike does very good campaigns. I'm not saying that they, necessarily would have done everything. But what I liked about it is that he made some suggestions, because for me, what it was just an add-on. It was an addendum to the whole thing. But if you have a look at the way he presented the rest of the stuff, I feel like to some extent he covered a amount of advertising, PR, publicity, sales promotion, personal sales, and direct marketing. He didn't necessarily cover it in terms of what they could do. So he made a suggestion. In some cases, if you feel the brand is doing extremely well, then you don't need to make suggestions. If you don't make a suggestion, if you present to me a campaign, you say, I think Nike is doing brilliantly well, and if you look at their sales, then I'm not going to say, but you didn't make any suggestions. You can make suggestions. So remember, if you look at the rubric, it says, if you want to make suggestions, you can. And obviously, I will take that into consideration when I do the marking. But if you decide that you don't want to make suggestions, because you feel their campaign was complete, that's fine. So this is the thing, guys. The problem is, again, we're dealing with the social sciences here, and I don't want to digress too much. With the social sciences, what you're doing is you're dealing, and Chris will have told you this in your research module other lecturer, what's her name, Yumna, I think, okay, in your research module, you're dealing with people. And with people in the natural sciences, you have laws. So E equals mc squared, what goes up must come down, etc., etc. When you're dealing with people, you're dealing with probabilities. They will probably respond in this way if you give them the stimulus, but not always. So, you know, you can say it's not like a maths equation where 1 + 1 = 2, then I have to give you full marks. It is an interpretation of the circumstances, and it's an interpretation of the material, and it is, and the thing is, that gives you the latitude to then give me your opinion and express. I'll tell you what I did. The very first thing that I wrote down, I didn't write it down first, but I think it was the first thing, and I'll say this now because I think it's important. Okay, I wrote this over here. I know you did this assignment yourself. You didn't buy it, and you didn't use AI. And the reason why I know that is because it's full of mistakes. You might say, well, gee, Rob, that's a bit harsh. No, that's the whole thing. If I know at the end of the day you did the assignment yourself, that's already going to be a huge feather in your cap, because I know you did it. I know that it wasn't something that you copied from somebody else and you didn't get it, you know, from a presentation because it's so specific. So I know Chris did the presentation himself. Okay, and that, therefore, that already says, okay, well, I know the student didn't you know, try and engage in academic dishonesty. That's already a plus. Now I feel kind of comfortable that it's your own work. Okay, and I'm like, okay, now we can take it from there. So that's the first thing. If at any point in time, and like I said, it's happened to me, I have been accused of academic dishonesty, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you know. And so it's not, we're not saying it's to break you down, whatever it is. We're just saying it's, so that's the first thing. And Chris did that very well. I have no doubt, obviously, because he would have done it. He didn't use, you know, ChatGPT to put together his assignment. It was done by himself. So that's a huge benefit. The other thing I was going to say is, well, Chris, okay, let me stop there. But so, Nortando, you, and it's a very good point you've made. You may feel that he could have done more on the recommendations. I was impressed that he included them anyway, because he got me thinking about, because remember, he knows this brand better than I do. He got me thinking about what was lacking in the Air Jordan campaign, especially the She Runs the Night campaign. Chris?
Okay, no, I'm also just listening to you, and it makes sense. My answer, Nortando, just from what I'm getting from your question, is it's a question about emphasis, I think, and you're wanting to sort of know if, when you do the step that involves a integrated campaign that has worked well, can there be more emphasis on that, as I did, and then sort of less emphasis on the recommendations, ideas, strategy for a new integrated media management campaign? And I would say that my balance with this would be a little off, and I think the question you're asking has a sense of that. I would have liked to have developed the idea a bit more and been able to be more specific about, for this new idea, a bit more specifics about ideas for, say, at what the ad would be, what the advertising would be like. It was very general, and I would say I would like for the balance to be a bit more balanced, if that makes sense, where you would sort of contextualize quite quickly in the beginning, like I did, and maybe spend an equal amount of time on the existing integrated campaign and going through what it was and why it was successful and how they integrated all the elements. And then I would advise probably a bit more specifics and detail in the strategy than I had in this particular presentation that I did. That would be my take on it.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay.
Notando, anything else? And please, you can ask questions anytime. You don't have to be limited to now. If you think of something, jump into the conversation or put your hand up, do something in the chat box, whatever it is. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think it does. Just one more question as well
Yes,
about.
please, you can ask as many questions as you like. That's what we're here for.
Okay. So for the presentation,
Yes.
obviously as we prepared, we're doing our research and taking notes and things like that.
Yes.
I just wanted to find out for the presentation, do you need to see within the presentation a lot of information and detail, or can we just put in important points and references and things like that, and then the bulk of the information that is going to be in the presentation will be presented verbally?
Yes. Short answer.
Yes. Okay, so Chris, are you did you want to add something?
No, I mean the actual the slides. So you'll see some of mine will say things like sort of prompts to me, refer to this page on this book, and I had them all open so I could read them. What's being marked will be the presentation. So, and that will be recorded, and that is what also for the S1 we're going to do something similar to this. It's that recording as a whole that will then be externally moderated as well. So it's not so much necessarily about what you've written on the slides. It is like what you say and what you present and what you know and have learned, and the evidence of that is it's both. It's the slides themselves, and it's your 20 minutes of presenting.
Cool. Thanks, Chris. Okay, so this is where I think this is probably an opportune time for me to say this now. Notando, just to answer your question. Okay, so the one thing that I did feel about Chris's presentation was, and this is unfortunately an occupational hazard. When you're, and let me use an analogy here, when you're in the kitchen busy baking the cake and you're knee deep in flour and there's sugar on the floor and you've got cocoa in your hair and that kind of thing, you can't really separate yourself from the whole process to see what we call the helicopter vision, the overall holistic picture. You're too involved in the thing to know, because that you can't gain outside perspective. So it's very difficult. Then it's unfortunately an occupational hazard. So for me, one of the critiques that I would have of Chris's presentation is it has all the elements in place, or many of the elements in place, but it's not as well organized as I would have wanted it to be. So, and in that respect, so what I would say is and remember, he wasn't doing a presentation, he was doing like a hybrid combo presentation, but then also telling you guys or showing you how to do the presentation. So, so if he had been a student who'd presented it to me, I'd say he's got some great sources. He's made some very good points. I see that he understands the concepts and that he's learned from the process, but it's a little disjointed. It's somewhat disorganized, and it doesn't flow as well as it should in terms of, and I'm not saying that Chris is going to go home and go cry because he's like, oh, it's such a bad day at work. It was, everyone was dissing me and giving me a hard time. So that's not the case at all. I mean, Chris is obviously, he's a smart guy. He's the academic manager, so he knows what he's doing. But from my perspective, so Notando, that may also be one of the reasons why you look and you feel that you weren't quite sure where it was going. So one of the things I was going to say to you as well is, you should at least have one dedicated slide to each thing. So you should have at least one slide that's got advertising, and at least one slide that's got PR publicity, and at least one slide that's got personal sales, and at least one slide that's got sales promotion, and at least one slide that's got direct marketing. So I can see you've covered, and Chris did cover them. He's gone through all of them to some extent, but that's what I would say. And I will say this: if I was marking it and he was a student, he was saved by the fact that he put his references into the presentation in terms of he presented them verbally. But I would still have wanted to see them on a page, even if it was just, you know, so it was one Bianca Favey and Mpo, and I was actually tell you when I go through my notes just now. Okay, so and then he would just mention it, so I can see he's got the source. Okay, and then he would be able to verbally quote the source, but I can see that he's got the source on the page. So in that respect as well, I mean, this has of course always been my big thing, you know, like Rob, you really and truly, you know, have, you know, you're like painful when it comes to this. Source integration, source integration, source integration, theory application, theory application, theory application. So even for me, Chris, you know, has done that, but it definitely is lacking. I feel like he could have done it more. And obviously, you know, because he ran out of time and, you know, he's got other work to attend to, etc., etc., etc. So I think for me, Tando, maybe that is why you feel like, you know, it's imbalanced, because, you know, it has certain bits, you know, and remember, guys, every lecture that I present to you is full of mistakes and full of ums and ahs and, you know, whatever. No human being is perfect. We're not perfect, and I'm not looking for perfection. What I'm looking for is knowledge transfer. Are you able to go into industry and do this? And people are like, this person knows what they're doing. They have a huge understanding of it. And I can tell you right now, if I had to ask Chris, do you feel like you understand the concept of integrated marketing communications and integrated media management better? I bet you Chris would say yes. He said, yes, I have a much better understanding of it now. A lot was, you know, there were light bulb moments when I was reading through the academic stuff. And you even heard Chris say, he said, ugh, the academic grind was such a pain. You know, it was like, ugh, I don't feel like doing this. But when he had done it and he saw how it grounded, as he said, his words were academic grounding. He felt like it was a chore. But that's it. When he had done that, he felt like, he said, he felt secure, like it was a safety net, because it affirmed and reaffirmed what he had seen, and he was able to ground it in theory. So that's, and it's not easy, guys. It's not an easy thing to do, and he's done it. You know, so that's what you guys need to do. So, Notanda, I wouldn't necessarily say that I was expecting more in terms of recommendations, because I think Nike does good campaigns. But I would have wanted to see more order and structure and better integration. So I hope that, and maybe that's what you picked up. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe like, no, Robert should really have had more stuff on the recommendations. So the point of the matter is, you know, Chris and I are going to still discuss how we're going to go about the whole thing. But I'm not expecting you guys, you'll see from the brief, I'm not expecting you to make recommendations. If you want to make recommendations, I want to know your brain. I want to know your mind. I want to see that you understand the stuff and that you can relay it to me and then to a company when you go work in industry or for your consultancy. Because unless you have a really, 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 you know, rich uncle or something, you're going to have to get a job, and that means you're going to have to work. And in order to earn money, you're going to have to be able to offer a solution to a problem. And this is what you're offering: integrated media management. That's what you're doing over here. Okay. But I hope that helps. I'm trying really hard not to be verbose, which I find very difficult. Anything else, or sorry, do you want to respond, Notando?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say, I don't know if it came off like, you know, I was critiquing the presentation too hard. I wanted to say that I actually found it very insightful and very informative and very interesting. I was just wanting to clarify that if we go about it the same way, if it wouldn't be a problem. So that's the one. And then also just to clarify what you said about the slides, you said you would want to see at least one slide for all 5 elements. Is that referring to the campaign analysis or to the strategy proposal or to both? Because then I don't know, like where would you want to see more of that application?
Well, how would you feel about this? Okay, if you did the strategy proposal, okay, and then you analyze the campaign. So what you did is okay, there are many, and this is the thing. You see, I know that what you guys want, and that makes perfect sense. You can do it one of two ways to answer your question. What you can do is, if you want to, you can propose a strategy first, okay, or you can analyze the strategy, okay, and then you can do the breakdown analysis afterwards. So okay, let me clarify here before I get myself tongue twisted over here. So let's assume, Northando, that you are doing a very successful brand. Okay, and so mostly because it's a very successful brand with a good history of marketing stuff and they've done so much, it's going to be more analysis than a proposed strategy. Okay, so there what you're going to do is your advertising, Chris.
The brief says to make a strategy. Okay, so Northando is asking, since the strategy that I presented was not in that much detail, the question is it okay if they go about it in the same way? And I would say yes, because there is some semblance of the strategy there, like the brief asks, and you would pass, you would be fine, but you would need, I think, a little bit more detail. And I would say, to answer your question, that's where you would go, okay, this is how I would do the advertising, this is how I would do the PR, just in more detail than I had done is preferable, because the brief says you must create this strategy. And the way that I did it was to strategize a campaign that was related to an existing successful campaign. So Northando, to answer your question, I think if you do it, go about it in the same way that I did in the presentation slideshow does, that hits on the requirements of the brief, but I would maybe go into a little bit more detail as to like what your plan for the strategy would be.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Okay, cool. I think, yeah. Other questions or comments, or Rob, do you want to run through?
It says over here.
Calling on. Do we have other volunteers, or we have to pick people?
That's fine. Sure. I wanted to come back to it. That's fine. Okay, yeah. Let's. Chris, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay. All right. I do want to move on. Okay. Northando, let me come back to that after we've heard from other people. Thank you. I'm going to answer your question in a minute, but thank you for the clarification, Chris. Okay. I'm just going to. Let's see.
You're breaking up a bit, at least on my side. I didn't quite catch the last sentence or two.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, that sounds a bit better.
Okay. I was saying I will come back to something that I wanted to discuss on what Northando said in a minute, Chris. But let me just give the other students the opportunity as well to give feedback if they want to. Pimetse? Pimetse, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome.
I have a question.
Sure.
So what are the key areas that need more attention to make one's presentation better?
Are you just asking generally, like a general question?
Yeah.
Are you asking in reference to Chris's presentation, or are you just asking?
I wanted to ask Chris, what are the challenges that he mostly faced while doing his presentation?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was hard to come up with an idea for the strategy, which the brief says you need to do. It became a lot easier once I analyzed one that had worked already. Then after that, ideas for a strategy for a new thing came about. It was also hard to get to like I said, to get to the books and the journal articles side of things. It was kind of hard to, after doing rabbit holes of on Google and stuff, it was hard to really sit down and focus and read and apply like that. That was maybe the hardest part, or the two hardest things is that, and like having a strategy for a campaign like I had briefly, and like I want to say again, more detail there would be nice. And that boils down to the point about start slowly, at least now, spending time with the thing, doing like the contextualizing, finding a campaign that your brand has done that worked, and like the slides that I did, sort of go through what that document. You can use literally the same headings as I did and replace them with your own brand and content, just with, I would say, ideally a bit more detail and direction on when you get to the step that's about your strategy.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Chris. Okay, so someone's going to answer your question. Guys, I am going to say this over here though. The one thing that I do feel that was lacking in Chris's presentation is I would have wanted to see standalone slides for each of the 5 elements of the mix. So, just to answer your question, this is so difficult to do when you when you pressed for time, and something that it's such a luxury. What you need to do is you need to, once you've done your presentation, you need to go over it again and again and again and see where you feel there's something missing. So I'm gonna take this moment to go back to the brief, okay, because I think that Northando raised an interesting point that's related to what you said, Umpemetse, and also what Chris said. Into he made a clarification. So if you have a look at the brief, okay, it does say create a comprehensive integrated media management. Now I wrote the brief, so and what I would do here is I would say, okay, let me go back and check my own brief and just see if I'm being true to, okay, create a comprehensive integrated media management strategy around the brand using the 5 elements of the marketing communications mix. Okay, so it does say that you need to create a comprehensive integrated, so it does need to have some of your own original thought. If you go down to the marking rubric at the bottom, it does say, okay, for the 30 marks of the discussion of the assignment after the presentation, including your strategic thinking, reasoning, and justification for your decisions. I've written here, note to concerned students, if you are presenting your strategy on an existing successful brand, such as Coke, you may include some points of how the brand has already used integrated media management to achieve high levels of market penetration. In such cases, your analysis of the existing integrated media management campaigns plus your recommendations for further success will be taken into account. If you're presenting a problem brand or an unknown brand, then your proposals and recommendations for helping that brand achieve strategic integrated media management success in the market will be reviewed. Okay, so Northando, and then just to speak to what you said, and also Umpemetse, thank you, Chris, for highlighting that. Okay, so Northando, if you're presenting a very successful, like I'm going to take an example. I know Tumi won't necessarily want me to do this. Okay, Tumi's presenting Barbie. Okay, and like I said, she will need to come up with and suggest how Barbie, so far, Barbie has been extremely successful. It's got over $1 billion at the box office. It's bolstered the Barbie brand, and we actually discussed I discussed with her last week. It was something that was put in place by Mattel. Now, Mattel is the toy company that owns Barbie. Okay, and I don't want to digress too much, but I'm coming to a point. Okay, so Mattel actually put that thing in place to use the movie as a vehicle you know, to promote Barbie, and they've been trying to do it for 15 years, but obviously, you know, it fell through the cracks and all sorts of things, but they were able to eventually do it. So the only thing so far that you could argue, there may be three things that would be wrong with the Barbie campaign. Number one, it's not working very well with conservative non-Western audiences in conservative countries, mostly Islamic countries, because it's very, obviously, you know, it's Barbie, so it's you know, it's clothing light. You know, there's lots of flesh and there's lots of, you know, that kind of thing, and that doesn't go down well in countries, you know, like Afghanistan, where the Taliban, or in Iran, where the you know, the fashion police are saying you have to wear the hijab, you have to wear a burqa, you can't show skin, and if you do, so in those kind of countries, it's been banned. So how would you overcome that? Then the second thing I would say is, Barbie is very white, so it's not inclusive, which is a major issue in 2023 Hollywood. So that would be something that you would need to address in her campaign. And those would be the two major things. I mean, obviously, the other thing is it's not going to appeal to an intellectual crowd. There are some people who are, you know, won't watch Barbie. They're the wrong target market. How would you, and do you need to even increase it? You know, do you, so those would be the things that would be most problematic. But for the most part, in her case, okay, she's going to be doing mostly an analysis of a successful campaign, not recommending, you know, what she could do in terms of a new campaign. And I'm going to say, well, that's great. You've done a very, really good analysis. If you decide, Notando, to present a brand that does not have as much presence as Barbie, then I'm going to be looking at what your recommendations would be. So both of them need to include recommendations. But see, this is where if you're presenting to me a completely unknown brand that I don't know at all, you can't do an analysis of an existing campaign because there isn't one. In that case, then I'm going to see, you know, your creativity come through, and you're going to be presenting something that's very fresh. In that case, then the marketing criteria are going to be slightly different. So I hope that answers your question. Metse, coming back to you, like I said, and again, guys, if you want to send me something or discuss with me, I'm very open to us having a conversation on WhatsApp. You know, if you want to have you know, a meeting with me, I'm available. We can determine a time and we can discuss and network and workshop your project. I think what you need to do is you need to make sure, so start with the basics. I like what Chris has done. You've started with an introduction and then move into the 5 elements of the marketing communications mix, where you analyze existing, and then at the same time you can propose new. So this is what they did well, this is what I recommend they should do better. And in the case of Chris, what Chris has done is he said he wants to do something which incorporates a completely new campaign, because he doesn't feel that the Air Jordan campaign, even the women's campaign, really nails the target market, which is fine. And remember, guys, again, because we're dealing with human beings, and because, you know, it's not like a math assignment where, you know, 1 + 1 = 2. It's open to your interpretation. As long as you have covered the stuff that's included in the brief, then you should be fine. I mean, like I said to you, Chris is definitely a pass. So I hope that answers your questions. I'm just seeing who else. Okay, next. Let me see who else is in the queue. You're welcome to ask more questions if you want to. Okay, Michelle, do you want to add anything? Have any questions? Michelle? Okay, I'm not sure if Michelle, maybe Michelle's stuff is not working. Chris, can you still hear me?
I can.
Cool, thanks. Okay, let's see who's next. Didi? Didi, do you want to give me your thoughts, feedback?
Hi, Rob. No,
Hi.
not because I think Chris covered a lot of things that I was questioning, and it ended up making sense. So I think I'm on the right track for now.
Awesome. Okay, cool. Well, feel free to jump in if you have any further questions. Cool. Thank you.
No problem. All
Awesome.
right.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, Lindiwe.
Hi, Rob.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Oh, wow. In terms of presentation, I thought it was good. For giving the time span or the time limit rather that he had on it, I think it was pretty fine with me. I think the only question or clarity rather I'd like to have is that when we're doing the presentation, are we primarily focusing on creating or bettering a strategy? I think that's just my ask. Are we taking a current strategy and adapting it, or are we creating something completely new, like analyzing an existing one and just creating something new off of that?
Lindy, is that your question in totality? Is there anything else you want to add? Are you? Is that good? Are you finished?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, cool. Okay. You know, if let's say now, and again, I'm using let's say you're presenting a very successful brand, and you throw the entire presentation out, okay, and present me with a completely new strategy for a brand. I'd probably say I would have liked to have seen, you know, something, you know, about what they have done in the past because it's a very successful brand. But I wouldn't fail you for it. I wouldn't say, well, you know, you haven't met the brief because you created something completely new. If you came to me and said to me, listen, Rob, you know, I want to have the freedom to be able to, I'd be like, that's fine. Have you met the academic requirement in terms of have you included your sources? If you did something completely new, like I said, if it was a very successful brand, I would have said, I would have liked to have seen, you know, something about the old strategy as well. But it certainly wouldn't, you know, be cause for, you know, your mark wouldn't, you know, you wouldn't now suddenly get, you know, 30% or something because you hadn't met the brief. Because you can, if you want to propose something completely new. Maybe you, you know, so I would say that's probably risky. To do something like that, what I would say is rather just you know look at what's been successful and then add to it. So yes, again as well, it depends on which stage the brand is in its development. If it's a very mature brand, think back to, let's take it back to King for a minute, okay? King, remember when you guys had to do in your F2s, we spoke about a blockbuster versus a niche strategy, and you guys all did that one over there, and all of you said a niche strategy because it was an unknown company, an unknown entity with a very small budget. So they didn't have money to become a blockbuster. So when Star Wars was first released, as an example, they had a niche strategy because they didn't know it was going to become a hit. Now, Star Wars, everything they do, got Disney behind them, is blockbuster. I actually saw a quote by Walt Disney. I'm sure you guys have heard it. He said, "You have to remember, all of this started with a mouse." So you know, so Walt Disney it was all about the mouse. Mickey Mouse was the beginning. So nowadays you can do a blockbuster strategy, but back then you couldn't. You know, taking it back to your textbook. So. Lindiwe, I hope that answers your question. If not, you can ask me the question again. But it's open to your interpretation, and I have to give you, as the examiner, some latitude and say, well, you've made a very good point. I can't fault that point. Like, for example, Chris today, okay? Chris didn't do everything the way I would have expected him to or the way I would have wanted him to, but I gave him latitude and said, no, it's definitely, I can see the most important thing is he did the work himself. That already is, you know, moving towards a pass. So is Chris going to get a distinction for today's presentation? No. He's not, I'm not giving him a distinction for today's presentation, but he will pass. There we go. So, Lindiwe, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Okay, cool. Dennis, you're up.
Hi, Rob.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah, some of my questions have been answered, but I guess the only one, but it's just based off of something you've said before. You said you want the presentations to have a lot of bling and stuff. So using Chris's presentation as an example, how much bling do you feel like it had? And if it didn't have enough, what other elements do you think he could have included in his presentation to make it more flashy and more, inverted commas, appealing?
Okay, that's cool. Chris, you'll have to let people in. Thanks, yeah, because I think you have control of the screen. Dennis, that's a great question. Thanks. Okay, so I wanted to run through the rubric with you guys, and I don't know if Chris is going to be able to stay, all too much longer, because I know he sort of knocks off. You guys have class until 5. I think he knocks off earlier, and I still wanted him to show me his textbook. So before he rushes off, I want him to actually turn on his thing. I want to see his textbook. So that's what I'm going to do to you guys. But what I will say, is this. I think in terms of presentation, and this is really just, I would need to reread the rubric and think about it before I hastily awarded a mark. I would give Chris, for presentation, because I think he did a great presentation, I give Chris 24 out of 30 for his presentation, because I think he presented it very well. I think he brought, so I'd give him a distinction, 24 out of 30, which is 80% for his, no, sorry, is it? Yeah. Between 21 and 24 out of 30, because it's 21 is 70%. So I would give him 22 or above, because I think his presentation was very good. So the presentation would be great. In terms of bling, I think he put a lot of bling in. I think it's very blingy. I think it could be more blingy. So I would need to evaluate again, but just off the top of my head, it probably wouldn't quite be a distinction, but it would certainly be in the 20s, because I think his presentation is good. I think it's a little disorganized, and I think, it's a little bit all over the place, but I think his presentation is good. I would like to see it more blingy, but and it's always about the visuals. In terms of the actual presentation, the way he spoke, listening to his brain, listening to his mind, I would be inclined to say that section of the assignment is a distinction, because I think he presented it very well. And you can hear Chris is just being himself. I didn't feel like doing this. I didn't wear, and I'm like, I appreciate your candor, I appreciate your honesty. He was not, I'm not expecting you to be a Dale Carnegie trained, public speaker. This is academia. It's a completely different thing. You don't have to win me over. I just want to know that you guys understand the work, and that I'm unleashing on the public next year a student who knows what they're doing. That's the thing. So does that answer your question, Dennis? I think it could be more blingy, but I think he's headed in the right direction. It certainly had some nice elements to it. I like the visual of the runners in Sydney, and then the poster that he did. But he could have put more bling. The one thing I did want to say, Chris, and I wanted to mention this, I'm sure that's why Notando had her hand up. I know that when Chris played his YouTube video, there was no sound. I actually think that's a problem with Teams. I don't know that it's a problem with Chris, because I know that I've done it in the past as well. So Chris, I don't know if you had any sound, but we didn't hear any sound. So that's a problem. If you guys want to present YouTube videos during your presentations, you're probably going to have to send us the link so we can watch them, and then you're going to have to pick up. I'm not sure what we're going to do, but I don't know if Teams allows you. Chris, did you present with sound, or was your sound off? Because we didn't hear any sound on the YouTube videos.
Yeah, it was on my side, so obviously it didn't come with. We're gonna have to figure that one out.
Yes, because guys, if you want to present, YouTube videos, in your presentation, look, it can't be the whole thing. They need to be short. But I really liked the way Chris included those things, and he was back and forth between the theory and the, that kind of thing. Notando, you've got your hand up. Do you know how to fix this problem, or do you want to ask something or add something?
Yes. So for Teams, I don't know if Chris had selected the option to share computer sound. So when you go to share your screen, at the top there's a toggle button there where it asks you if you want the option to share the sound. So if you don't click that option, it will play the video, but the sound won't come through.
I'm so glad you know this, Notando. We'll be calling on you on the day to help us. I'm going to check it out and see if I can figure it out. But thank you so much. That's very helpful. Thank you so much. I think that's why you originally raised your hand, because you actually wanted to alert us to the fact that we couldn't hear the YouTube video. But guys, thank you, Notando. Sorry, Chris, you want to say something?
No. I'm just saying I see it here now, top right, include computer sound. Just click it.
Okay, awesome. So guys, so I will stop you in your presentation and say, I can't hear your YouTube video. So if you want to, like, for example, I have seen some really, really good stuff. For example, you can present, let's say you're doing a successful brand, okay, and they have a TV campaign or a TV advert or a cinema advert, so some sort of audio visual thing, and they have their advert on the YouTube channel. You can play it and say, Rob, here's the example of advertising, and it's integrated with all the other things, because if you look at it, playing an advert that you had on TV or in the cinema on the YouTube channel which is free, because they didn't pay to boost that. That's just on their YouTube channel. That's integration, guys, because you've got YouTube as direct marketing, and having creating an advert is advertising because it's paid for. So there's an example of integration. So it would be nice for you to include, but remember, you can't just present. I mean, I had a student once who printed out an assignment, and it was the Wikipedia. He said, "Here's my assignment," and I said, "Okay, it's Wiki," and I said, "Thanks so much. Here's your mark, 0." And I gave it straight back to him because all he literally did was he printed the Wikipedia page and gave it to me and said, "There's my assignment." I said, "Thanks so much." You can't do that. So you can't do a 20-minute presentation of an existing YouTube campaign, because then I don't know that you actually did the work. So, but if you want to include some YouTube stuff, you can. It's there's nothing wrong with that. So yes. So Dennis, it had some bling. I would have liked to have seen more. So really, wow me. Remember, I'm jaded. I've sat through many presentations, in corporate and on both sides and etc. But see, the thing is, Chris has a fine mind. He's obviously, he's a smart guy. So I was seduced, for want of a better word, by academia. I'm like, oh yes, I love these connections that he's made. That's really cool. Which I'm still going to try and go through with you guys, before the class finishes. Ironically, this is one of those classes where we actually run out of time, which is interesting. Chris, before you go, I really wanted to see your textbooks and stuff. So I'm not sure how much time you still have. Can you give us a time frame, please? I don't know.
Sure. Do you want me to quickly just show them to you?
Please, yes. I want to see your and what I actually really need to do is I need to check all your sources so that I can then determine your mark. So please will you show them to me? Will you please? And I want to see them. And then I just want to, because guys, I need to know that you have your textbooks with you. So yeah.
That's the
okay.
one.
There's your King. Thanks, Chris. Good to see you. Looking good. Looking good.
Then it was that's Skinner.
Awesome. There we go. Fantastic.
Jane.
Very good.
And then Kukumur.
Okay, very good.
And then Beneka, Survey, and Pumo.
There we go. Oh, okay, very good. Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, so Chris, that's 3 plus Kung. So you've done 4 of your, and then you had your 3 academic sources. Hey, your 3 online sources. And what I liked about what Chris did, guys, is you had 2. You had 3.
2.
Okay. So guys, I will want to check that over there, but I can see the articles. He actually printed out, or what he did was he downloaded the PDF so I could see his articles. So I can see that he's referred to those over there. Now, what I won't do now, in the interest of time, is I won't say, Chris, please won't you read that passage for me again from Kukumud, because if you go back to your presentation, you said Kukumud, I think was on page 63. So please go read that that specific, because he actually mentioned them, but I might do that with you guys. But you can see, guys, that wasn't hard. He's got his textbooks with him. There are lots and lots of textbooks in the library, so go take them out. Okay, and there we go. So now I feel very confident that Chris has done the work, and I'm very impressed. Thank you, Chris. Awesome. Okay, cool. Dennis, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, who's next? Who haven't we had? Matsidiso. Matsidiso? Matsidiso, are you there? Okay, not sure. Matsidiso is okay. Onelena? Onelena? Onelena, can you hear me? Can't hear you. I see your microphone's unmuted, but I can't hear you. You're having connection problems. Okay, Onelena, please feel free to jump in if you are having a problem, or you can send a message on the chat if you're battling with connection. Guys, can you all still hear me? Am I coming through?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Wonderful. Okay, so guys, you feel free if you want to jump in, it's fine. Okay, so let me go through my notes. I've got quite a few. Okay, I think Chris did a really good job. It was very good, and that's what we would expect from an academic manager who's, you know, working for Boston. So, okay, let me go through my notes. Okay, so he showed me his books and his articles. So I'm going to mark that off my list. Good, I saw them all. Okay, I loved his use of Kukumu and all the other guys. Skinner and Jane, they were all excellent. I loved them. That was very good. I could see that he put those sources in. Okay, I was concerned about the whole, and I would want to grill him on the brand loyalty thing and say, Chris, what do you mean by brand loyalty? Let's discuss and unpack that, but not too much, because that's more of a focus for your S1 than for your F3. So I'd probably let that go. I loved the graphs that he did at the beginning. I thought they were very, very, very insightful. Also, the breakdowns between the different generations. So you can see maybe so I'm Gen X. Maybe that's why brand loyalty is not important to me, as you can see, in terms of I've never owned a pair of Nike Takis in my life. I never ever will. They're far too expensive. I saw those prices. When Chris pulled up that website, I was like, you paid 2,400 for a pair. Are you insane? I'd rather invest 2,400 Rand in the stock market on a stock that I know is going to increase, or, you know, buy, you know, something that is going to increase in value, because the minute you put those Takis on, you know, and they're going to be ruined. So I was shocked at the prices, but it was very good that Chris did that. Okay, one of the things I was going to mention that ties into what Chris had said, and I love this. I thought it was so very good. Chris actually mentioned, I think it was very insightful, and I would have to give him extra marks for this. I thought it was very, very cleverly done. That's why I thought his presentation was so good, and it's definitely worth a distinction. He specifically said there's a disconnect between Air Jordan and the fact that you know they did this campaign for women, but women don't, you know, really respond to the brand that much because it's Michael Jordan, because it's a lot of men. So I thought that was really clever. And if you go bother Chris too much, but Chris, if you're around, if you can please put your press back up for me.
Sure. One second. Where are you wanting me to go? Is there a particular like here? Can you hear me still? I'm getting silence, but can anyone hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. He just sent a message in the group saying there's something wrong with his connection.
Okay. Thanks, Notando. I think we should give Rob a chance to sort out what's happening. I'm sure he's frantically trying to get back. But can use this as an opportunity to have a break again. Let's see, 10 minutes from now, where we are. If Rob's stuff hasn't come right by that time, in about 10 minutes time, then we'll we'll conclude. But let's
Chris,
just give
can
it
you
a
hear me?
Okay, there you are.
So sorry, I don't know why I've switched over to tethering off my mobile hotspot because my Wi-Fi seems to be the wind has really picked up here, and I don't know if it's because of the weather. Yes, so I'm sorry about that, guys. Just as we were getting really into the juicy stuff, and then I died. So yes, okay. So I was busy telling you guys. So Chris, I don't know if you can put up your presentation. You probably need to go and not to. I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know what your schedule is like.
No, that's cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Please can you go to the slide for me for the vision?
Great. It's the triangle, this one.
Yes, please. Yes, thanks. So the mission. Okay, so guys, you can see, okay, look at the mission, and I don't know if this is the mission for Nike or the mission for Air Jordan. I'm assuming it's for Nike. Okay, and this for me is extremely limiting. Now, and this really and truly, speaks to the brand. Look at the mission: bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. So Chris really picked up very nice on this, and I really liked the way he did that. It's a very limiting mission because all the women and men who don't consider themselves athletes. I mean, everybody needs footwear. Okay, so they might say, well, and maybe that relates to the reason why they were losing market share to Adidas or to, whatever, because they specifically targeting it at some. And if you're a small niche brand, a good marketing strategy they will say to you is proudly exclude the majority of people. But if you're a very successful brand like Nike, why would you exclude so many people from the market by saying, I want to be an inspiration and innovation, okay, to every athlete in the world? I mean, there are lots and I was thinking of a very good example. And I think this is a really, really good point. And Chris picked up so cleverly on it and strategically and said, but the thing with Air Jordans is they're not really catering to to the markets because it's not aimed at women. And I thought that was very clever. And that's why he said, let's make it more inclusive. He specifically said there needs to be more inclusivity. So let me give you an example without going too broad. So you remember the whole Harry and Meghan thing where they faked that car chase through the streets of New York, a la Diana in Paris, because she's trying to sort of, seance her, her dead mother-in-law kind of vibe, to increase her brand presence, and it's backfiring horribly. And people in New York turned around and said, honey, how did you manage to, do a car chase through Manhattan? Manhattan is gridlocked with traffic. It's so bad. The traffic's so bad. There's no way you could have done a high-speed car chase through Manhattan. And it got me thinking about the number of women who work in Manhattan in New York who go into a corporate office. Okay, and this is not that much anymore, but it still happens. Go into a corporate office in New York, okay, and they only put their high heels on when they step into the office. When they're on the subway or in the taxi or on the bus, whatever it is, they'll wear a pair of tackies. It might even happen in Joburg. I mean, there's no woman, unless she's got really, really good feet, who's going to walk around, in a high heels on the Gautrain or in a minibus taxi. She's going to put some tackies on and then change her shoes when she gets. So why would you exclude that market from wearing? And now maybe you might say, well, Rob, they don't need Air Jordans. Well, maybe they do, because this is the other thing as well. Chris, can you please go back to your slides? It's one of your statistic slides, one of your previous slides that you did with your strategy. I think it's this one over here. To be successful, look at this over here. And what is this? This is a non-owner. What is this? This is a Jordan owner. Okay, so you can see most important life aspects of Jordan owners. Okay, this is in the US, but look at that high rating. To be successful, they're extremely so. Why would a woman who works in corporate, she's a corporate attorney, one of you guys, now maybe you don't consider yourself to be an athlete. Okay, so why would Nike exclude you from wearing their tackies? Just Chris, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You hear
I can
me?
hear now. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't. Did you get all of that, or did it break up?
I dropped off for a few seconds.
Okay, but did you get most of it?
You were saying why exclude people who are successful or also want to be successful but don't match in with the athlete label?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct. And I love the way you picked up on that and said, you know, it's not inclusive enough. So why cut yourself off from a target market? That was really, so I like that. That was extra points. Okay, then guys, okay, so obviously the inclusion of the sources was great. Okay, I love the back and forth between the visuals and the popular business source that you did. There was one source where you did an analysis of the Run the Night campaign, and you were referring to a popular business source. It was like some marketing thing with a pink background, and was one of your online sources, I think. So yes, and the way you referred back and forth. Plus, look at the visuals, guys. He's got the advert on the right-hand side. She runs the night, 3rd of May 2012 in Sydney, and on the left, he's got the visual. Okay, and look at this over here. I mean, also what he also picked up, which I thought was really, really cool. Okay, she runs the night. The actual event is a sales promotion, which Chris also picked up on. So that was really cool. And you can see, look at the big drop banner on the right-hand side of the screen. That's advertising, okay, at the event. But the actual event itself is a sales promotion. And what he also very cleverly picked up on is the fact that at these events that they ran, there was a 44% increase, or 44% of the market who actually bought Nike merchandise or Nike equipment at the event. So you can see that the sales promotion and the personal sales feed off of each other. Integration, integration, integration. So you've got the advertising, you've got the sales promotion, you've got the personal sales, and I bet you lots and lots of people took selfies and smileys and whatever it was and stuck it onto their Facebook pages, stuck it onto their Instagram feeds, etc., etc., etc. There you've got your direct marketing. So the only one that's missing, and I can tell you right now, this campaign generated huge amounts of publicity for Nike. So there is your 5th element. So you've got all 5 elements, perfect integration. You can see, even Chris says, analysis of an existing integrated media management campaign, Nike, plus links you might need. Okay, so aside from the fact that he's given you, you know, the breakdown of, so very well done in terms of that over there. So love that. Love the back and forth between the visuals and the popular business source. Something that he also mentioned that comes from Kotler, I think he mentioned it. I'm not sure if he had the source, or maybe it was one of the other sources. He spoke about consistency and cohesion. Okay, he spoke about that, and then he specifically mentioned how that was this over here, that source with the looks like Russian or Greek names, whatever it is. You can see one strong message to the audience. And then Chris, there was another slide, and you can see also look at the source at the bottom. Organizations must articulate and communicate their ideas clearly, coherently, and in a persuasive manner. And guys, I can tell you as well, I know Renee Bienica. She was an associate of mine, or a colleague of mine at UJ. Sonia Fave was my supervisor for my first attempt at my PhD. So I know that Chris went and looked, and he showed me the textbooks. I'm like, okay, so he didn't go make these sources up or whatever it is. I know these people. I know that they're involved in the communications field. So I know that these are good sources. I'm like, very good. So you can see the integration, the back and forth between the academics and the application. So that was great. Chris, there was another slide as well. I'm going to mention that at the same time, even though I had it later on. There was another slide. I think